think everyone's close enough that they want to be. We're talking, if not, crowd up. No need to sit in the corners or anything like that. For the most part, I'm just going to be asking Jason some questions, his moderated kind of talk and overview. We're not going to be seeing that slide change up there. Just because it's not tied up to my tablet, so that's how it's going to go. Okay. So, brief introductions. For those of you that don't know me, and that's probably everybody here, my name is Logan Foster. I'm a local game developer. I've been developing games since 2004, and I helped co-found a group here in Edmonton to help network and advocate the games industry called Game Camp Edmonton. I was asked by PureSpec to come and be the moderator for this talk. So that's why I'm here and why I've been selected to sit here and talk about this. Who this talk is designed for or about gamers, game developers, creative type people, or just someone looking for a nice, entertaining kind of talk to find out, what it's like to be, Jason and what he does and why he's the guest of honor here at PureSpec. For the format itself, I'm going to be going over a few questions. There's about 40 in total, so hopefully that should be about 40 minutes in time. After that, we're going to open up the floor for any Q&A that you guys might have based on the talk or anything that you've come in here with. If for some reason you can't hear me at any time, just kind of speak up or raise your hand or whatever, and I'll project louder. That is possible for me to do. So with that said, when the QA time does come, I'm going to ask that you just please stand up so everyone can look at you, address you, and that your question can be vocated, hopefully projected to the whole room. So with that said, there's one last thing I got to cover here, and that is because PopCap is now a Division VA. Is that correct terminology? Okay. There are some questions that Jason will not be able to answer. And
you feel free to ask him.
Yeah, feel free to ask him, but he does reserve the right to say, I can't answer that question. And as such, I did have to format some of my questions to be certain that I didn't ask him anything that would be incorrect for what he couldn't answer.
So there's nothing really that sensitive.
Okay.
But you can try.
We can try. We'll see what we can get out of it. Maybe we'll get some new title to slip out or something like that here. A world exclusive launch announcement or something. So.
Yeah, our guys would probably more than me about that. But,
cool. Okay, so with that said, we're going to start off with some introduction questions. So, for those of you that don't know who you are, please, Jason, introduce yourself and what you do for a living.
my name is Jason Kapalka. I'm one of the co-founders and the chief game designer of PopCap Games. So that's the short story.
Cool. So we're also going to have some little bit humorous questions in here, so it's not going to be totally serious. So one of the humorous ones I threw in here is EA is often looked at by some gamers as the Borg of the games industry because they consume and assimilate everybody. So my question to you, Jason, is do you have like an EA Borg ID number, or do you just call you Jason?
I do have an ID number now. I think it's 140031 or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, so far it hasn't been too corporate yet. So we've got it was interesting. We did hear some stuff about. We started looking into EA's accounting. They've got some very complicated accounting, and they've got some crazy rules about stuff. And I guess that somehow their division in Canada is a non-profit organization, which I was kind of surprised by. So yeah, so it is kind of a bigger organization for sure. But no, I still retain my name.
Cool, that's great. So next question for me. Edmonton seems like a kind of a strange location for someone who's an electronic arts executive to be at. So what exactly is your connection to the Edmonton region? Why are you here, and why did you want to come talk at PureSpec today?
Not that strange if you count all the guys at Bioware. So, but in my case, it was well, I grew up in Edmonton, so I lived here till I was 25. Yeah, and so kind of went to the University of Alberta and got a couple degrees there, and then moved to San Francisco and was there for about 6 years, and then moved to Vancouver after that. Yeah, so I have some pretty strong ties to Edmonton, and knew some of the people who organized this conference, some of the on-spec people, and so yeah. So when they asked me to come back, I thought it was kind of a good excuse to come back to Edmonton and see some people I haven't seen in a while, and just kind of trying to support the community. That's kind of where I came.
Cool. Thanks. So like you said before, you're a University of Alberta alumni. What exactly did you take at U of A?
I took an English degree, so I have a bachelor's in English and a master's in English.
Okay.
Primarily, well, my thesis was in creative writing, so I wrote a bunch of short stories, and a collection of short stories that actually a lot of them were actually published in On Spec here at the magazine.
Awesome.
Yeah, not directly related to computer games,
but still great stuff, still creative endeavors. So. Next question. There's always a raging debate whether or not post-secondary education is truly important to the creative industries. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, it doesn't hurt necessarily, but at the same time, the other two founders of PopCap were college dropouts, so I don't think it's necessary either. It's sort of that you've got these cases like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs who are, nominally college dropouts and so forth. So I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. I think that, in some cases, formal education can be a big help. In other cases, it's not necessary. There's plenty of self-taught, computer programmers and artists and so forth. So yeah, it's very possible to do it without getting a degree. I think sometimes people feel like they need to get a degree to get into video games, but it's not really true. I think a lot of the technology is so new and changeable that people don't necessarily. By the time it's in a college course, it's too late. So we like to kind of learn it.
And a tool is still a tool. The talent behind it is still the key to succeeding, right?
Yeah. And so there are plenty of people out there, 15-year-old kids who are doing Flash programs in their basement, and that's as good a route to get into the video game industry as going to school for computer engineering.
Okay, so with that said, we're going to move on to some introduction questions so we can learn a little bit more about Jason. So before we get this far, I want to ask the first question here. Is this the first time you've been to PureSpec? Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. What do you think of it so far? I know it's early in the morning and it's probably a tough question if you're
actually haven't woken up yet. There seems to be a lot of people in costumes.
Not enough coffee.
Not enough coffee yet.
Yeah. That you're kind of wanting to check out and see here at the show?
There's some sort of like elfin corset place or something like that. So.
Oh.
Other than that, I don't know. I was going to browse around a bit. And again, it's been a while since I've been to a science fiction convention type thing. So I used to go to the San Diego Comic-Con once every couple of years. So that was I was familiar with that from a few years back, and that was kind of interesting. This one, I'm not quite sure. I'll probably drop by and talk to the on-spec people, and after that, I guess I'll play by ear.
Okay, cool. So next question. What are some current bits of technology that you currently have in yourself right now, and why are they important to your kind of day-to-day life or operation?
Well, I've got an iPhone 4S right now, which obviously useful for communication and so on, but also we do a lot of games nowadays for it. Actually, as I said that, my phone vibrated. I'm getting a phone call, but it looks like it's from telemarketers or something like that. So, I don't know if it's that. But also we do a lot of games for iPhone, so having one of those around is useful for just impromptu testing and whatever else. Other than iPhone, I guess technology, I don't know. I think I'm trying to minimize the number of gadgets I carry around. So I think the only other technological item I have is a little keychain flashlight, which turns out comes in handy. But it's hard to get one that's really small. So these big honking, flashlights that are not very convenient. But other than that, I'm trying to have the light, daily carry rather than the full, gearhead one. I certainly know some guys who carry around at least 2 or 3 computers on their person at any given time, utility belts and all that. Yeah, I'm trying to go light.
Such helps, right? Yeah. Indiana Jones has one. So. Next question. As an artist myself, I've got a bookshelf of source material, reference art, things like that I like to keep around and collect. Is there anything that you yourself have been inspired by, any particular artists, writers, works of fiction, things like that you found inspirational that you kind of keep around yourself in your office and your kind of working partners?
Gosh, well, for video games, I mean, there's no one individual game, I guess. I'm pretty, I don't know, I've got a pretty broad range of stuff that I'm reading or looking at any given time. Well, yeah. I don't know, I mean, a lot of the classic arcade games I'm pretty fond of, various comic books and so on. And in the field of games, it's hard because there's not really the sort of canon. So there's a few well-known figures like Miyamoto or Sid Meier, but other than that, there's just not a huge number, especially when you get into the area that we're sort of doing, the more casual puzzle games. There's very few people who you could even name. It's like Pageant-Knobs for Tetris, but after that, it doesn't have the same kind of breadth as some other fields. actually I do have a shelf of games, but you know, a bunch of German board games and so on. But they're interesting to look at, but they don't necessarily always have a direct influence. Same with role-playing games and so forth. I've got a bunch of Dungeons and Dragons manuals and so on. Even though I've played in a long time, just to kind of keep up on modern mechanics and rules and so forth.
Okay. Next question here. What are you currently watching on TV, if anything, is your busy schedule?
Let's see. I think I watched Game of Thrones and waiting for the new season of that, and I think I'm watching Survivor currently. I don't know why, but I think I've been watching Survivor for 20 years. I don't know how long it's been on for a little bit. At least 10 or 15 years, I guess. So somehow, every time I start watching it, I think this is dumb, I'm not going to watch this. And then every time somehow I come back a couple episodes later and I'm interested in the drama again and so forth. It does have a weird appeal.
Okay.
And I guess it's kind of a game in that sense, so it's kind of interesting from a game designer perspective to kind of see how they're manipulating it.
Especially the marketing of it, just to kind of push you to go and watch the next episode, even though you're like, oh, I'm done with it. This show was just awful today. I'm like, oh, wait, so I want to see if the crocodile gets it next week.
Well, or also, the game design mechanics are interesting. Things like they add the Redemption Island idea, which is this thing where when you get voted out, you don't actually leave the show, you go to sort of this purgatory. And then when other people get sent to this Redemption Island, and then they have to duel to see who remains and who finally gets cast out entirely, and then eventually you can come back, or one person can come back. So it's kind of this long shot chance of redemption. So you're not entirely out of the game when you get voted out necessarily. So it's kind of, as a game mechanic, it's actually kind of interesting. So it means that even after you get voted out, you have a chance to come back. Anyway, so I guess that's what I'm watching it.
Is there any kind of movie that you've been watching recently that's been kind of a particular favorite of yours? If you've had time for movies?
Yeah, I watched a movie that, we watched Bejeweled the other night. That's still a really weird movie. If anything, that movie is actually probably, it's even weirder and almost more relevant now than maybe it was back in the 80s when it came out. It's sort of very, at the time I remember it was just considered just super bizarre and nearly incomprehensible. And it still is kind of incomprehensible, but it feels like it really was ahead of its time in terms of a lot of its ideas about people kind of being absorbed into the sort of media world, even though that was basically pre-digital. So that was that last one.
Cool. Anything that you're currently reading?
What am I reading right now? I was actually trying to read the Game of Thrones books. I'm only about, on the second one, so I'm still going. And I think, I just finished reading Alan Moore's graphic novel, Neonomicon, which is his take on the Cthulhu mythos stuff, which is actually, it's sort of typical late era Alan Moore, which is to say, really, really weird, and shot through with some extremely pornographic sequences, which was kind of, again, odd for the Cthulhu sort of thing, which is, so that was surprising to get lots of scenes of graphic rape in the middle of a Cthulhu Lovecraft kind of pastiche. So it was interesting. I'm not entirely sure it was good, but it was certainly startling.
Okay. Here's a big question for you. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars, for sure.
Yes. I had to throw that one in there for a geek audience.
Yeah, well, I guess yes, although with every passing year, it's kind of, I don't know, I guess it's a tricky one. I would say Star Wars, but then with each passing year, George Lucas sort of kind of wears away at sort of fan loyalty. While Star Trek, on the other hand, I did kind of like the reboot version, although I think the funniest thing I heard some hardcore Star Trek fans say about the reboot was, it says, yeah, sure, it was fast moving and entertaining. I hated it. which I think kind of is unfortunately true for a lot of the hardcore Star Trek guys. They kind of are so wrapped up in the old school stuff that they don't want to see a new version. They just want to keep seeing the old stuff.
Some of us like the new version.
I didn't say it would, for sure. I liked it. Yeah.
Okay, and here's kind of the one that I sort of pulled out of obscurity, but might be kind of fun for those in the room that are old enough to remember or recall this. But apparently you have a connection to the U of A Gateway comic Space Moose. Are you able to elaborate on that at all, or is, knowing that Space Moose was kind of a controversial thing, do you want to, comment on that?
It's on record. So yeah, I was connected with Space Moose. It was actually, I kind of co-wrote and co-drew the first year of Space Moose with Adam Thrasher back in the day. Although when I say that, I kind of have to be careful because the first year of Space Moose really sucked. It was terrible. And yeah, and I think everyone, even Adam, disowns it. It didn't really come into its own until the second year when Adam kind of did it on his own. So if you look at their first year Space Moose ones that I did, they're pretty terrible. But so were most of Adam's. So it was kind of it was an odd project that we started doing, and then I kind of gave up on it, and Adam went off on his own and kind of went into a more unique direction, which is what people remember it for now. The sodomy barn and all that stuff.
So I have to throw another question here. What do you think of the Space Moose kind of being adopted suddenly in pop culture, like Futurama? Stuff like
I
that.
remember seeing a few of those. I kept seeing these little references to Space Moose, and it was always a little bit unclear whether it was actually, was this really, a reference to Space Moose or a coincidence? I'm not 100% sure. I don't know if I ever heard confirmation that Space Moose has been used as a reference, but it's possible. It seems to have a life well beyond what anyone would have expected. So that's what Adam's doing these days either. He was doing like bionic research or something like that when we were doing that. That was 15 years ago.
It's kind of a strange comparison between Space Moose and research.
Yeah, it didn't seem like, you wouldn't have expected Adam to be the kind of guy he was when he read Space Moose. You'd expect someone a lot scarier.
Okay, with that said, we're going to move on to some questions specifically about PopCap itself. So first question here is, what inspired you to create a company with John, sorry if I get the name wrong, John Benchi and Brian Fietz?
Yeah,
Okay.
not very French.
So were the three of you friends already, or kind of how did you decide to come together and form a company?
Well, I guess I can do the whole kind of story of how, actually no, I'm supposed to do that later. Well, basically I've been working in San Francisco for a .com company called Pogo, originally called Total Entertainment Network. And I was a producer there, and I was supposed to be looking around for new game ideas that we could produce. And I came across this internet game called Arc, which was done by these two goofball, trailer trash kids in Indiana. And it was a pretty fun game, and so we thought, okay, we should get these guys out here and see if we can, produce it with them or something. And so they came out, and they're 19 years old, and this was John and Brian. And their business guy kind of took one look at them and thought, oh, I can't deal with these two. You go, Jason, you go deal with them. Maybe you'll understand them. So they kind of looked really weird. They looked like kind of something like a cross between, headbangers from Foo Bar and some sort of boy band, like Hanson or something. So they looked really weird, and they're like super nerdy and odd, and they weren't even old enough to go to a bar. So I took them to the office, and we played video games there and so forth. And as it turned out, they were really, really smart, and they really knew games. And so, we got along pretty well. And then, so we did end up producing that game, and it went on Pogo for a while, and that kind of got them into the industry. And so they eventually moved from Indiana to Seattle, where they worked for Sierra for a couple of years. And I stayed at Pogo in San Francisco until about 2000. Around there, we all kind of were a bit sick of our jobs and thought we could do better on our own. Although our ambitions were not really very extreme. We thought we'd make little web games and then sell them back to companies like Pogo or Sierra, and kind of just make a living that way. So that was the big plan. And so in 2000, we decided that would be a great time to start an internet company. As it turned out, we only later realized that in fact that was when the entire internet boom was collapsing. But luckily, we were so completely inept at business stuff that we didn't even notice or understand that until much later.
So starting a company is always very difficult to undermine a game development studio. So you guys were trying to essentially pioneer a whole new kind of game genre at that time. And you did pioneer a new method for games delivery, games distribution, stuff that I remember my time as an independent developer looking at going, this will never fly. This is, who's going to go and want to play the game for free and then buy it later on the web? Like it was just kind of a crazy marketing idea that really seemed to pick off. So with that said, and knowing how difficult it was for you guys, probably the first few years to really kind of get the market to adopt to this and things like that, how difficult was it for you guys to make it through the first few years of kind of PopCap?
It actually wasn't that difficult. Well, we had the toughest time we had was right at the beginning, we did a couple games, including Bejeweled, and we couldn't quite figure out what to do with them, and ultimately started licensing them mostly to Microsoft. Microsoft wouldn't buy it that way, but they were willing to pay us $1,500 a month to lease Bejeweled, basically. We thought, okay, well, that's not so bad. If we got 10 or 20 more games like that, that might support our company. So that was what we were doing. But what happened around 2001 was, as I was mentioning, the bottom dropped out of the internet, markets, and advertising, which is how most of the games were making money, started going really downhill. And so, we could see the writing on the wall about that. And Microsoft was starting to get really kind of touchy about prices, and they're starting to be complaining that $1,000 or $1,500 was too much to pay per month, and so forth. So we were starting to worry that maybe the advertising thing wasn't going to work. We're going to be in trouble. And so we were kind of trying to figure out some other possible ways to make money off the games. And the guy, Howard Tomlinson, who's a UK developer that we knew, he suggested doing sort of shareware, which was, they'd been around for quite a long time. But it was very kind of underground almost. It was, with the exception of Doom and a couple other things, it was pretty obscure. He suggested we could try that and see how that went. And we thought, well, same thing as you said, like, well, they can play it for free on the web, why would they pay money for it? But we thought, maybe they'll do it because their modem is busy. They need to hang up their modem and use the phone line. Which was actually, at the time, in 2000, that was kind of what the internet was for a lot of people, was a dial-up modem. And so that was actually a thing. You might have to, disconnect your internet so you could use the phone. So we did a deluxe version of Bejeweled that we were initially going to sell for maybe $5 or something. And again, Howard said we should charge $20 for it. We're like, what? That's outrageous. And he said, well, yeah, but if you charge too little, this is what they found, is that if you charge a low figure, people assume it's crap. And once you charge a lot, they assume it must be good. And so we're like, well, I don't know, but we'll try it. So I guess we can lower the price later when we sell it. And so we did that, and we put it up online. So you could download the free trial and play like 50 times or something like that, and then you have to pay $20. I guess that the thing that had changed since the earlier days of shareware was that back in the days of Doom, when you did the shareware stuff there, you download something off a bulletin board and play the demo level, and then you send a check to Texas, and 3 weeks later, a bunch of floppy disks would come back that you used to install on your computer. So it's kind of a painful, drawn-out process. Whereas by 2000, 2001, people were they had the internet, they were starting to be comfortable with the idea of putting their credit card, onto the internet. Still a little crazy, but things like Amazon.com were out there. And so it was the revolutionary thing, the sort of second coming of shareware, was that you could, play this trial version of the game and then, put your credit card in and get a code and suddenly have the full game, nearly instantly. Now, of course, now, the era of DLC and downloadable games and all that stuff, that everyone sort of understands that that's how, games are going, and probably will be exclusively like that in a few years. But in 2001, that was still a pretty crazy concept, and a lot of people, just hadn't thought of it or didn't think it would work and so forth. So we tried that out, and the story we tell is that Brian, our programmer, he'd written a little program so that whenever we had a sale, we'd play a cash register sound on the computer and go ka-ching. And we were sitting on the couch there, and I think John's mom was berating him on the phone and saying that he needed to get a real job. So he couldn't just sit on the couch and make money. And we were ka-ching in the other room. He said, yes, I can. So then we started hearing the ka-ching sound more and more often until we had to disable it because it was getting kind of annoying. So that was obviously where we realized that model was going to work. And after that, that worked pretty well.
Cool. You might have already covered this one already, but in your time making games, what was the most difficult challenge you've ever faced?
Most difficult challenge. I don't know. They all seem difficult at the time. I guess it's one of these things where I guess every different game always seems hard. You're always trying your best to make it as good as you can. It's hard to say if anyone is worse than the others. I guess I Peggle was pretty bad. Both those games had, there was some tension on the teams making them, and I think ultimately a couple people got fired or quit, during the process of creating them and so forth. So those were, I mean, ideally this is stuff that's not visible to anyone, who's playing games. But they were sort of tough calls.
Okay. No critical like hard drive crashes or resource corruption or anything like that.
That stuff always happens, but
Nothing that affected the game development itself.
Usually the factors that were problematic they're more, it was rarely technical stuff, it's usually more human factors. People are the biggest problem in game development.
Your company PopCap has developed a lot of games. Can you list some of the ones that you worked on that maybe everyone here might have heard of or know?
Well, Bejeweled was our first game, and obviously still our flagship title in a lot of cases. More recently, Plants vs. Zombies is very well known on iPad, iPhone, and whatever else. Zuma's Revenge, and Zoom Blitz, Peggle, and Bookworm. Gosh, then you start having a whole bunch of other ones, Chuzzle, and I don't even remember anymore, Rocketmania, and Noah's Ark, Seven Seas. We've got it's been several dozen. So, but of course, many of them are not that well remembered.
Yeah.
And so probably no one besides me is a fan of Seven Seas anymore. But I still kind of like it.
Okay. Here's a question I've got to ask you. How much time did you personally lose playing Bejeweled?
It's kind of weird. I know. It's hard to measure because I've been playing the thing more or less in different forms for 10 years now. So I don't know. I guess the one good thing about it is that even though I've been working on that same game in different iterations for 10 years, every time I finish one, I kind of sort of think, okay, I'm going to work on another Bejeweled game. And then usually a few months later, there'll be something like, I guess we should work on a new Bejeweled game. And I'll fire up a version and I'll think, okay, am I going to be able to play this thing anymore, or are we totally sick of it? And I guess one thing is I never get sick of it, so I can always jump back in and play some Bejeweled, and feel pretty good about it. So it's
Pretty much like everybody else. Huh?
Yeah, it's less like I don't have something. I don't go on a mega jag where I spend hours and hours playing Bejeweled. It's more that over the course of 10 years, I don't know how many hours I've logged on it, but quite a few. I think for me the biggest thing is that I've always been able to come back to it and not just gotten sick of it. So I think it's a good sign for the longevity of the game. In the same way that Tetris doesn't really get old. You can go back to Tetris and it's pretty much the same. It doesn't date.
Right.
So quite a bit.
You talked just a little bit before about Plants vs. Zombies and how it's on a lot of platforms. How does this make you feel knowing that it's pretty much on every major platform that's out there? Does it kind of feel like a major accomplishment over, say, other things you've done in the past, or is this sort of just kind of a natural progression of development?
Well, we were always trying to, one of the things we decided is in the mid-2000s, I guess, there was a couple different directions for casual game development. And one was the direction that Big Fish Games was going in, where their goal and their motto was a game a day. And so they started producing tons of games and publishing tons of games and literally releasing a game every day. And that was an effective business model for them. And so we kind of thought about it. We just realized that we didn't really want to try and pursue that. So it was kind of counter to how we worked on things, which was a little more painstaking and took a lot longer. So we figured if we're not going to do huge numbers of games and throw them at the wall and see what sticks, we better make a few games that are really good, but make sure that those few games are on every platform imaginable. So that was our conscious decision to concentrate on fewer high-quality games, but then make sure that you put them on as many different devices and platforms as you can, so that you really reach as many people as possible. So Plants vs. Zombies, it wasn't the first game we did on a lot of different platforms. It's probably one of our more complex games to date, in terms of just having quite a lot of stuff going on, and a lot of content, animation, and everything else. And that was probably 3 years in development. It was a fairly small team for much of it, but it's still a long time. So after you spend 3 years developing anything like that, you really want to make sure you get it out to as many people as you can. And the truth was is at the time it was started, iPhones didn't exist, and so we had no idea that was that's probably the biggest platform for Plants vs. Zombies right now. But we had no idea that was going to be the main platform when they started. So ideally, you just work on trying to make the game as good as you can with an eye toward being broadly playable, and then you sort of have to see what happens by after that.
Okay. think multiple platform targeting is kind of a key to success now for a lot of developers to aim for, or is it sort of do you think they should maybe target for one specific one and then kind of branch out after that?
It's a tough one. I think multi-platform is definitely still a really big deal, and it's just the platforms are becoming different. So it used to be, multi-platform meant Xbox and PlayStation. Now multi-platform is starting to mean things like Facebook and mobile. And there's challenges in there. Doing the same game on Facebook and also on iPhone is really hard because these are companies that don't necessarily play well together. They have different platforms and languages they get to use. So that's really challenging. But that's probably what the big thing will be in the next couple of years, that kind of cross-platform stuff. So the technologies are not really there yet, but it's clear that's the direction. You want to have a game that exists that can be accessed whether you're doing it through Facebook, through your iPhone, through your Android device, through whatever. But how to get there, that's definitely a challenge.
So my next question for you is, of all the games you worked on over the past 10 years as a game developer, which one to you has been most memorable or kind of strikes the biggest chord of kind of being your baby or your most favorite game?
I guess right now I'd say Bejeweled Blitz probably, just because that was a bit of it was interesting. We just come off doing Bejeweled Twist, which was this 3-year project, which was a bit of a chore. The game was okay, but it didn't really do that well. And then Bejeweled Blitz was sort of a return to how we'd done games back in the 2000 era, where it was sort of very, very off the cuff. It was all done in a month or two with a really skeletal crew of. It was the sort of thing that it was very much indie bootstrap stuff within the larger company. Because basically, this was before Facebook games were really kicking off, and we wanted to do Facebook games. We didn't have anybody to come in and do Flash, except for this one customer support guy who taught himself Flash in his spare time. So we thought, all right, well, let's get this guy, and maybe he can take this old version of Bejeweled we had in Flash and we can do something with it and get it on Facebook. And so it was a real kind of jury-rigged, kind of chaotic process. But it was really a lot of fun doing that, and it was fun kind of coming up with a different way to approach Bejeweled, which for a lot of people now, that's kind of when they think of Bejeweled, that's what they think of as the Facebook version where you're playing it and you have 60 seconds and it's a leaderboard competition. So I felt pretty good about that one. It felt like a good way to reinvent Bejeweled for that new generation. Maybe they weren't dying to play the old Uptime version anymore. So that was probably the one that jumps to mind as most recently they've been most interesting.
Okay. Outside of any your PopCap games you were working on, is there anything that comes to mind as your personal favorite game?
Boy. Well, in long term, I guess all-time favorite would probably be Civilization in its various incarnations. That's a game it'll probably be around in some form, in 20 or 50 years from now. That's probably my all-time favorite. More recently, I guess I was playing a lot of Skyrim right now, like probably most everybody else. So that's a pretty cool game. I do like the odd, crazy, weird, independent art game as well. So some of the stuff by Jason Rohrer or Braid or Minecraft and stuff like that. So Minecraft also came out yesterday, the official version.
Official release, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. As a company that's now owned by Electronic Arts, what, a year or two ago?
Actually, about 4 months ago.
4 months ago? There you go, get my timing off on that one. But I have to ask, because EA, like I said, has a bad reputation with gamers and game developers. What are your thoughts of kind of being owned now by a large multinational corporation versus being a small independent developer? Are there any kind of like pros or cons to this that you kind of found that for any changes or?
Well, so far, actually, weirdly, in some way, after that whole process, EA was actually the scrappy underdog of kind of compared to some of the other potential things we were talking about doing in terms of selling the company or trying to do a IPO. So actually, EA struck us as being honestly, they've had some dark years, but they're pretty upfront about that. And their current bosses and stuff are all hardcore gamers. John Rigatella, the CEO, he plays tons of games. In fact, his biggest problem with him is he kind of plays so many games. He likes to kind of try and poke his nose in and sort of make suggestions on game design and so forth, which can be trouble. It's hard to tell the CEO No. But so far, it was, again, we thought about it pretty carefully before we did it. And the main thing we were thinking was that what had happened in the game industry was that 5 years ago, if you asked me sort of what's the future of gaming, I would say, well, someday what will happen is that video games will become mass market, and everyone will be playing them, and your mom and your dad and your kid's sister and whatever, they'll all be playing video games in some form. It won't be the strange thing where you have to be part of that little cult to play games. Everyone will have a game they play in the same way that everyone might play a card game or a board game from time to time. But I would have kind of guessed that that future would come by in maybe 10 years or something like that. What happened was that that future came a lot faster, thanks to primarily smartphones and Facebook. Suddenly that future is kind of now, or a year or two ago even, where suddenly you had these vast numbers of people who were not really traditional gamers, who suddenly were playing games on those devices. It was Angry Birds or Farmville or whatever. And so that future arrived immediately. What that meant was that games in general had gone kind of mainstream. And that idea of casual games that we'd always had, that sort of a niche thing that PopCap could do, had suddenly become very broad. And so it's kind of an odd position to be in. So we're a moderately sized company, but we weren't a huge company. And suddenly casual games have gone from being kind of a niche thing to global mainstream. So there are two choices we have. We're either to remain a niche company in the suddenly mainstream kind of market and keep doing sort of stuff that we're doing and hopefully do well, but it would definitely, we wouldn't be the biggest players in that space because we wouldn't have the resources to, it would be like, trying to make, if you're making movies and you're doing movies on a shoestring budget, you can still make films, but you're not going to probably be able to make films that reach, huge multiplex audiences. And we didn't really want to be indie, kind of game makers. We always wanted to entertain as many people as possible. So the choices there were either to remain kind of small and let the industry kind of outgrow us, or to try to grow and match that. And that meant either growing the company rapidly, which is something that we weren't really, we'd never been good at that, and we didn't really want to do it either. Or alternately, get acquired by a larger corporation. And that was kind of where we eventually decided was the thing to do. And the idea was that with a company like EA, they've got this broad global reach and a lot of resources that we don't have that allow us to kind of play in that bigger market. So that's it's been the theory. We'll see how it works out. So far, it's been pretty good so far. That's only been a few months. Cool. And in the long run, we hope that what will happen is that PopCap is still a part of Electronic Arts, but in the same way that a company like DICE or BioWare is. They're owned by EA, but they have a fairly strong identity. And if anything, what happens is that successful studios within EA are given more control. So BioWare has been given more oversight over other RPG products and so forth in EA. And so if we're successful, that might happen with PopCap, where we might end up doing more stuff within EA and getting access to more of their resources and so on. So so that's the long and short of it.
Long and short of it. Perfect. Thank you, Jason. With that said, PopCap, assuming this is probably before the EA buyout happened, PopCap had the idea of becoming a publisher itself of independent games for the Sony website to help kind of other indies get out there and launch the market. Is this still kind of the goal of it? And if it is, how does it make you feel as someone who started as an indie, being able to give this opportunity now to other startup developers of small teams?
Well, we did have the idea of trying to publish indie stuff, although what eventually ended up happening is we decided that we couldn't really do it. It was just too much of a hassle to be a publisher. So instead, what we ended up doing now is we try to find people where, if they're developing something interesting, we'll try to hire them, or in some cases, acquire them. We made a few small acquisitions of companies that we like. That just is better suited for us than trying to be a publisher. It's if we like someone, we don't want to just do one thing with them and then have them go off. We'd rather have them be part of the company and do stuff for us moving forward rather than single.
Right. And legality is probably way simpler doing it this way than, say, trying to deal a long-term business relationship and build that all stuff up and who gets rights and copyrights.
Yeah, that's part of the issue, I suppose, too, is just that we want to kind of want anything we build, we want to own. And when we're doing stuff with, as we found when we were doing publishing stuff with other people, situation where we just took something and put it on the shelf. We usually were doing a lot of work on it. So it's usually a 50-50 kind of thing anyway. So yeah, when you put that much work into it, you kind of, you don't want to have it just be a thing where you get some royalties and pay people for it. You kind of want to be able to, you know, own it and do more stuff with it.
Okay.
So yeah, so we're more in the line of maybe hiring or acquiring people that are publishing.
Okay. That's great to know. And that segues us on to kind of the next set of questions just about the games industry itself. So that said, how did you get your big break in the industry? Obviously, you worked for Pogo and started PopCap, but was Pogo kind of your big initial segue into it all?
Well, I was originally a writer for Computer Gaming World, which is a magazine back in the, well, for quite a while, I think from the 80s through the 90s. I think they went out of business finally in the early 2000s. But yeah, while I was going to the University of Alberta, I started doing freelance reviewing for this magazine out of San Francisco. And actually that was that's kind of what paid my way through university was video game reviews. So eventually one of the editors from that magazine went to join a startup in San Francisco and gave me a call and said, come on down. All right.
Cool. Well, that said, I mean, you've been in the industry for 10, 12 years now? Is that right? Longer?
Well, yeah, I guess I left, well, I was freelancing during university and then went down to San Francisco in 95, so I guess, yeah, something like 15, 20 years, I guess, depending on how you're counting.
So, aside from the, the obvious change for games becoming more mainstream, casual games becoming very popular and being on social networks, have you seen any other kind of changes occur since you started and kind of how it is now?
Has the video game industry changed in 20 years? Yeah, a few things here and there. I don't know, I guess one thing is, I mean, there's many things. I don't know actually time we have with the game that we learned.
I think we got plenty of time.
Okay. Well, one of the big things is oddly is that both the audience and the developers are changing. That they're well, for one thing, they're older. The average gamer is now generally a little bit older. We have a lot of people in their 30s and 40s who play games, and so similarly, the people who make games are also tend to be older now too. So you still have a lot of new people coming in, but 15 years ago, you didn't see too many old people at all in a software development place, and now you'll see people, 30s and 40s are fairly common. So it's sort of a bit of a change. The kind of the wild and woolly days where you go in there and there'd be programmers all over the floor, in sleeping bags with piles of Coke bottles around their heads. That still, I guess, it still happens here and there, but it's a little more sedate, I guess, or you can say mature and you look at it. So which I guess is a factor of the industry, just getting more established.
Old people don't sleep on the floor as well as they did when they were down here.
I don't pull as many all-nighters as they used to.
Speaking of demographics, how do you feel knowing that PopCap was kind of one of those key instigators towards making the female gamer demographic into one that is actually considered now more seriously than it was in the past, where it was kind of this odd little niche market that no one really wanted to touch?
Let's see. Well, I mean, the thing with that was we never really set out to target women specifically. We eventually realized that that was a large part of our audience, or in some cases up to 70% for some of the games. But one thing we found is when we did try occasionally to do something that was specifically targeted for women, it kind of came off weirdly. It came off like pandering, and I don't much like that approach where you're saying it's a game for women, so let's make it about nannies.
Or princesses and ponies kind of thing.
Yeah. So we didn't really ever try to consciously do that. We're aiming more for universal stuff. The idea that same way a Pixar film tries to be pretty universal. We want the games to be enjoyable by everybody, and that's, I think, the only reason it seems unique is, or unusual, is that so many games have been heavily targeted towards males. And so something that's a bit more closer to 50-50 seems very odd, just by comparison to a Call of Duty type thing, where you use heavily male. But yeah, we're aware of it, but we don't specifically say, and then honestly, Bejeweled we never set out to say, oh, women like sparkly gems. It was really just that the gems were really well suited for pattern recognition, and they were, they looked cool and stuff like that. But it was not, it was not trying to home shopping network to buy it for women.
With that said, since you guys were, as PopCap, one of the pioneers of casual games in the 2000s, Do you have any thoughts or feelings now on kind of how social portals have kind of taken over that kind of platform for social games to be popular on?
Well, I mean, it's kind of it's just one of those things that happened in the last couple of years where Facebook kind of became this huge thing, and a lot of the traditional methods of getting casual games that we were doing, years ago, like downloading games onto your computer, has become, it's still out there, but it's not really the way people are playing games these days. A lot of them, if you're a casual gamer, probably are doing things like playing on Facebook or downloading an app on your iPhone these days. So that's just been a major sea change that everyone has to deal with.
With that said, here is kind of a high-level question. What do you think developers today are kind of doing right and maybe doing wrong when they are making games? This is sort of a generic statement.
Well, it depends on the groups, I guess. There's a bit about some of the social game developers there's a very heavy reliance on metrics and analysis of metrics, which is interesting. It's sort of a way where you put the game out there and you can analyze everything that players are doing and then adjust the game based on that. And in some ways it's great, because it's really cool to be able to see how your players are actually responding to a game rather than kind of guessing. And being able to do something about it, they can actually fix the game if there's problems. On the other hand, I think sometimes over-reliance on that can lead to this idea of almost designing a game by formula, basically, where you're sort of just tweaking knobs based on, if I turn this knob, will the players stick around a bit more and spend a bit more money, then I'll tweak that knob some more. And it can be sort of effective, but it doesn't really, I guess the idea is you can optimize, but it doesn't necessarily innovate. So you have the same thing that Steve Jobs said, it's not the consumer's job to know what they want. And Rob Pardo from Blizzard, was saying about World of Warcraft that metrics can tell you what customers want today, but they can't tell you what people want tomorrow. And I think that's that might be a problem right now, is that there's a lot of emphasis on metrics and the casual game and social game design. And it might be a little bit, it might be going too far in some cases. And in a sense, stifling innovation, for the sake of optimization.
So the next set of questions we're going to talk about now are just going to be about becoming a game developer itself. I'm sure it might be a subject that is something of interest to some of the audience here in the crowd. So hopefully Jason will give us some really awesome response to that. So there's a lot of people in this room here that want to be game developers, writers, authors, or create some other form of medium, especially here in PureSpec. This is more of a conference about geek culture and all things geek, science fiction, fantasy, all that kind of stuff. So do you have any inspiring words of advice for people in this room that want to kind of get into these creative fields?
Well, my career as a writer is not that extensive, so I don't have too much great advice there. For video games, I mean, there's several ways to get to it. And depending on where you are in Edmonton, BioWare is a pretty big outfit here, so it's possible to just, if you want to work for a big company, that would be the big company to go try and work for. I mean, depending on whether or not it's the sort of game you're interested in. If you want to do something on your own, that's, I think, also a pretty big possibility, no matter where you are. It's still a really good time to do independent games. It's entirely possible to do, a one-man or a very small team doing a successful game for, on the web or on iPhone or Android and so forth. You can, there's been a number of pretty successful games that have come out of that, or Minecraft type thing. Now again, they're not all going to be like that, but it's the sort of thing that you can get out there and do something that, even if it doesn't lead to sort of one of these, rare kind of runaway hits, gives you a lot of experience and sort of a way into the industry. So there are schools you can go to, I don't know in Edmonton, but in Vancouver, there's Digipen and a couple other places. So you can go to school to get some sort of training in various related fields of computer art or computer engineering. And that can be very useful. But the truth is the best way to get into the game industry, I would say, would be to make games. Just get some people together and start doing it. There really are ways to do that. You don't have to. I guess one of the problems you see with wannabe game developers is the same you sort of see with kind of wannabe novelists. Is that they talk about the thing they want to do, but they don't do it, and they always have excuses or reasons why they're not doing it. But as a novelist, there's no real excuse to write a novel. You just have to write. With game development, there's always the excuse of, well, I don't have the resources to do my giant, Call of Duty, Halo thing. And that's true. You're not going to make
especially going from, say, 2000, we were starting up to now, a ton more electronic distribution options and distribution methods to get out there. Say 2000, when we were starting up, it was very much, very limited portals to go with and very limited choices. Where, aside from that, it was box retail, which is really difficult to get into. But today, there's the App Store, there's Steam, there's a million other, electronic distribution companies out there. You've got everything's doing electronic distribution, and they're looking for products. So I think that's a really good thing to just get out there and make something. There's no excuse, like you said, not to do this.
There's no reason someone in Edmonton, because with the internet, there's no reason you could be anywhere you want. If you get like a handful of guys together, you can make a game, and they could do as well as the other game once it gets on the internet.
And segueing for that question.
Just 5 minutes.
Oh, 5 minutes. Okay. Sure. So I'll just ask this one quick question here, and then go over to open up the floor. So segueing from what you're just saying there, you said a lot of institutes people look for is funding. Do you think that is kind of a holdup that a lot of people look for? And do you really feel that people should get funding, or should they just go and make something?
I mean, you can. We didn't really get funding. There was just 3 guys working in our basement. It depends on the scale of what you're doing. If you need money, you're going to get money. But I would say that it would be a bad idea to use that as an excuse for not doing stuff. So it's very easy to sort of use that as a thing of, oh, if only had money, I'd quit my day job and do this or that or whatever. I don't think it should be an excuse. I think that you can always find a way to do stuff if you really want to do it. And whether you have funding or not, the truth is a lot of game development you can do on the sort of the basic indie side is not that expensive. It just takes, it's expensive in terms of time and your own dedication to it, but it doesn't have to be crazy costly.
Okay. So with that said, I actually only have one question left, but I'm going to open the floor up for you guys that probably may have some questions here. And if there's a little bit of time at the end, I'll ask my last one. So, so your hand first. Let's go with you.
Sorry, great. What were some of the issues you encountered with multi-platform releases and how you overcame them?
Well, yeah, that'll be a long answer.
One issue there.
Well, the truth is we haven't really overcome them all. We still have trouble doing multi-platform releases because there's no universal solution. You can't write a program once and have it ported everywhere else. So we still have a hard time going on to Android because there's so many different devices and resolutions and all this other stuff. And yeah, we don't. Again, the truth is it's a tough problem, and nobody has really got a universal solution for it yet. And the truth is we're not the best at it either. We've kind of done it. We've learned over the years, but it's been kind of a long process of doing things like, oh, I guess we should localize stuff so that people can play different languages. All these things that we've picked up over the years. So I don't know. I'm not sure that there's a single thing. I guess that would be an example of one. Is when we first started doing stuff, we didn't even think about the idea that we'd want to do it in a different language other than English.
Yeah.
So everything was hard coded in English, and so we learned what everyone else has learned, which is that in general, if you're doing a big release that wants to go worldwide, you want to set it up so that all the language strings are separate, so they can be translated and plugged in separately and so forth, so you can easily put it into different languages in different countries. We didn't do that initially. So if you're making a game and you're thinking about that, I would do that. Make sure you can easily translate it.
We'll go very next.
I was wondering if you were aware of the homage to Plants vs. Zombies in World of Warcraft?
Yeah. Oh yeah, we talked to him about that. We worked a little bit on it.
Oh, nice. I just wanted to know your opinion on that. And
Oh no, but that was really cool.
I personally bought the game after because I was playing WoW and I'm like, this is amazing. I need to go get this game now.
Yeah, no, we kind of they mentioned it. They showed it to us, and they wanted to get our okay with it because it's very close, obviously. And yeah, we thought it was really fun. So we helped them out a little bit. We got Laura, the singer, to do the singing Sunflower stuff. Yeah, no, we weren't really worried about it. We thought if anything, maybe we would get some sales out of it when people played it there. We really didn't think anyone would be like, I don't need to buy Plants vs. Zombies. I'm going to World of Warcraft. So.
I'm going to go with him next, and then back to Dave.
So what's the development cycle for a typical PopCap game? How big is the team? How long does it take?
Let's see. It's varied. In the earlier days, the teams were typically between 3 to 5 people, but it could sometimes be a very long cycle of 2 to 3 years. Nowadays, the teams are getting bigger, and the it's mostly a factor of, it's just very hard to do a 3-year game now because the platforms are changing so rapidly. If you start doing an iPhone game today, and it took you 3 years, who knows what an iPhone game would look like. So we're trying to, by necessity we have to accelerate the process, and so it's changing things around a little bit. It does mean the teams have to get a bit bigger, so we can go a little bit faster. It's fun. It's challenging in its own way. You know, sometimes some stuff is hard to accelerate. You know, iterating games is tough to do at high speed.
But there's still much smaller teams than for crippling
yeah.
like BioWare teams.
Yeah. By comparison to BioWare, when we talk to them, it's we're interesting to each other because we have a very radically different approach. You know, they've got teams of hundreds of people working on these things that take longer than 3 years, and we have these teams of a half dozen people or whatever doing things. So we have a very different approach. I think they're interested in seeing how we do things because that's becoming kind of something that they I think want to get into a bit more just because of the nature of the industry changing around. But at the same time, the stuff that they're doing is really fascinating. We've never done a giant project like that, but if we ever did, they definitely be the guys to ask about it.
Dave, you have a question?
Yeah, make it quick. You mentioned metrics. In your opinion, is it best to let your gut override metrics and focus groups, or should you always take that into account? If you had a decision to make gameplay-wise, game design-wise, what would you do?
I wouldn't quite put it that way. I would actually think of it sort of the opposite almost. I would sort of say you start with your gut decision, and then use metrics to verify that. So, kind of, if you think that something will be cool, go ahead and do that. But then, the good thing about metrics is it'll let you know if you're right. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you are trying to entertain people, and at some point, there's verifiable ways to tell that. If nobody buys your game, nobody plays your game, then it's not working. But that said, you wouldn't want to start with metrics. You start with some sort of inspiration or idea that you then use the metrics to kind of prove out. So if you sort of say, I think this will be fun, let's do something that, test it out, and then the metrics can tell you whether you're right or wrong. So I wouldn't put it that way. I would say that that's the right way to look at it. That's my opinion.
Perfect. Well, guys, we are out of time officially, I believe.
Yeah.
Before we get the evil players, like hurry up and tap on the floor. So I'd like to thank Jason for taking the time, coming up from Seattle to visit. Thanks. I hope I covered kind of a good range of stuff for you guys that you wanted to hear and stuff like that. So.
You picked such lovely weather to show up.
So I think you're okay, so I remember it.
Yeah.
Last Friday, putting winter tires on my car, I'm outside in shorts.
I heard it was nicer last week. But anyway, it's refreshing.
So Jason, one question I wanted to ask you, we didn't really have time for it.
I probably
Your heritage in Seattle, seen as a tech hub, innovator, and things like that. And what do you think maybe as an outsider, we could do more here in Alberta to become more like Seattle and has become our own sort of mini hub?
Yeah, and then you went on to BioWare. I haven't seen you again. Here I am. How are you doing? Yeah, I'm still in video games, not a BioWare anymore. Yeah, oh, okay. Yeah, actually, Pat's Pat's over at Food now. Actually, I'm